One of the most popular pieces of water to overlook is the nondescript gravel-shouldered U-shaped run. Clearly, it has a few of the features that fly fishers look for, but it's almost always worked through quickly in favor of the more defined structure points of rock and wood in more interesting pools and runs up or downstream. If you're floating in a drift boat, chances are as you float through, you'll hit the shoreline seams with a searching pattern, either a large dry fly or a streamer. If you're wade fishing, you most likely are pulling out the indicators and drifting nymphs deep through either side of the main seam lines if you choose to fish here at all. It's big and featureless and often avoided, but this water is certainly home to trout. There's good flow of folding water with plenty of depth. It's a prime lie in that there's plenty of access to mixed oxygen, likely excellent hatches, and plenty of escape cover. The secret on this water is to pay attention to the little hints that something interesting might be happening. As you approach this water, you might see a stonefly flittering in the air. Maybe you notice a few small mayflies like olives or tricos in the tail-out seams as you walk up. If you're drifting, maybe you notice that the birds are starting to swoop down to feed on the water's surface. As you drift through, maybe you see a fish rise. That's exactly what caught our attention this day. We were going to float through and carry on with our day, but our spidey senses went off the charts. It was cold, showery, and howling wind, but the birds were feeding heavily, and one fish rose along the edge. We swung wide, drifted the tail out of the run, dropped anchor, got out, and turned around to have a look upstream. Looking back upstream is the biggest key on this water. The surface is usually lit like a silver platter, and any disturbance will show as a dark, almost black feature. Stoneflies and mayflies are perfectly silhouetted. What looked like a rising trout from out on the river as you drift past suddenly reveals exactly what size and exactly where the fish is rising. It's a wonderful silver canvas upon which to do your work with the fly rod. It's time to work methodically from the tail out back upstream. Because it's so open and exposed, wind will blow mayflies from across the river straight to the shoreline seam and fill dinner plate-sized eddy pockets at the tail-out with mayflies. These locations are incredibly shallow, and at any other time no trout would choose to expose itself in 6 inches of water. But because this water feature favors trout surfing up and down the river shoulders like a yo-yo, trout can arrive at such locations in mere seconds if food is available. If danger comes, it can be gone to depth of water in a split-second tail flick. Extreme patience and delicacy of presentation is required in these shallow dinner plates. Line the trout with a hard landing of even a size 16 mayfly pattern, and it's over. A longer leader with light tippet with a firmly loaded backcast to a placed, gentle presentation is key. These are the most stunning eats because the subtlety usually leads to an explosion. The middle reach of the run is nondescript at first blush, but if you inspect it carefully, you'll notice spider seams. These indicate a blending of currents either from the submerged waves in the gravel substrate or a mixing of the same from further upstream. Similar to the tail-out pocket, mayflies will congregate on the edges. Again, it's nothing for a trout to move laterally to the shoreline seam and shallow edgewater if the wind and current collects insects. It's the most likely location as there can be long, calm, stable, flat bits of water that make this a perfect location for several trout to feed while expending little energy. Quite often there will be a larger rock or a piece of wood stuck in the head seam of the run. This is where the current is strongest and conflicting during high water and most of the water action occurs. everything downstream settles out. A 2-inch thick stick or a football-shaped rock in a foot of water is prime water to watch for a rise. The current seams will be quite awkward at this location, as the split seams around the feature will create a soft pocket that the fish may use as home base, then swing left and right. This is a tough spot, and you're best to get as close as possible, approaching on your knees to get a rod length downstream in order to lay the cast perfectly in line as to avoid tail-out drag or cross-seam drag. This is not a place for mending. Place the fly and leader in the seam and drift. Your casting accuracy needs to be spot on in this location. Even with the most accurate casts, you may present your flies off the fish's feeding rhythm, or you caught micro drag line it didn't like, or you had too large a fly, or maybe the fly landed off center and the trout didn't like it. Or maybe it wanted lighter or limper tippet. No matter, if it keeps rising, give a second presentation, then change something up. The time it takes to change up will rest the fish. Keep having a go, changing these subtle things until you get the take or spook the trout off. Have fun, there's no guarantee in these micro locations.